Okay, everybody, what I'd like to do today, or what I'd like you to do today, is to work on some dichotomous key skills. And this is something that we've done a couple times, not in a while though. This is something that's going to be on your state exam at the end of the year. It's there every year. I can 100% guarantee it will be there. And you're going to have to make your own dichotomous key. This is something that we've talked about before. Remember, a dichotomous key is just a sorting chart. It could be used to sort animals, it could be used to sort chemicals, it could be used to sort any object or substance. It doesn't really make a difference. And here in these examples, they're just using things like bicycles and tin cans, and there's a paramecium, and so on. We looked at two different types when we've done this before. We have the graphic style, I like to call it, where it's visual, and it's basically a big flow chart with all of the objects and how they're separated or split up. So here we've got our living creatures. They would be divided into microscopic or macroscopic. If it's microscopic, then it would be the paramecium. If it's macroscopic, you can see with your eye, then it's either the animal or the plant. If a plant has a woody stem, then it would be one of these trees. If it has an herbaceous stem, that means that it's like soft, then it would be the dandelion, and so on. Here are the non-living things over here. We could divide them into metallic and non-metallic. If it's non-metallic, not like a metal, then it's a rock. If it's metallic, made out of metal, then we have the wheels, no wheels, bicycle, tin can, and so on. We've also talked about the other way of doing it, the verbal or written out style that looks like this. Here, these are a little tougher. Usually most students don't like this as much. Most students prefer it the other way. There are some students that like this though and prefer it this way. I actually prefer it the other way myself. But you need to know how to do both. Both ways you'll be asked about. You'll be asked to produce both. You'll be asked to make both. And it's something that you need to know how to do. When you do it this way, the verbal way, to make a dichotomous key, I would start out always by doing 1A and 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and so on, and then go from there. So your 1A and 1B are going to be the first way that you're going to split the objects up. In this case, we've got living and non-living creatures in this example. So 1A would be like, if living, go to 2. Come down here, and maybe you've got, I don't know, a horse and a tree. You could say something like, if legs, it's a horse. If no legs, then it's a tree. And that's kind of a silly example and, not very long or well thought out. What I'd like you to do today is two things. I'd like you to make, starting out the graphic dichotomous key. So I'd like you to make a graphic dichotomous key, the kind with the arrows or the flowchart style, something like this, going on and on and on, using some plastic creatures. There are bags of plastic creatures. I say creatures because not all of them are insects. This happens to be a grasshopper. Not all of them are insects, though. Some of them are, some of them aren't. They all have a letter on them. This happens to be letter K. So what I'd like you to do is go through and sort these. There's a whole bunch of different creatures. Here's a spider, letter E. So this isn't about identifying what the creature is. It's just simply using the letters that are on it to sort them. So when you sort these things, and maybe I'll just do this as an example, the grasshopper has 6 legs, the spider has 8 legs. So maybe the first way I'm going to split this up is 6 legs and not 6 legs. I'm not saying that's what you should do. It's just a simple example. I would suggest phrasing your statements in a it's either got 6 or it does not kind of format. Because what if you had something like a centipede? Well, a centipede doesn't have 6, and it doesn't have 8, but you need to put it somewhere. And if you say 6 and not 6, then the centipede has a place to go. The centipede can go in here, and it now has a place to go on the chart. So try to be mindful of the way that you phrase these things. Color is something you usually want to avoid, because many creatures come in multiple colors. That's not really very helpful. Same thing with size. Size doesn't really work well for this. If you've got a small creature, maybe it's just a baby animal, and it's going to get large at some point. So size isn't usually the best way to sort these either. So you want to look at the structure. How many legs does it have? Does it have an antenna? Does it have wings? And on that note, some of these creatures have wings, and it might not look like it. So you've got to really think about what the creature is, too. Some of these creatures have obvious wings, like this one. But something like the grasshopper does have wings, they're just folded up. Beetles, if there's any kind of beetle in your bag, like this, beetles have wings, but the wings for the beetle are under a hard shell. And when the beetle flies, think of a ladybug. Ladybugs can fly. The shell opens up, the wings unfold, and then the beetle can fly. So if you're going to use wings, just be mindful that you don't always see them. They're not always very obvious like it is here. Sometimes the wings are folded up or hidden in the body and might not be very obvious. Okay, so anyway, I'd like you to do that graphic style down to the individual organism. I don't expect you to be able to identify what all of these creatures are. That's why they're labeled with letters, so you can use the letters in place of calling it a spider. You could just put down letter B or whatever letter is on the animal, or organism, C, E, whatever. By the time you're done, you should only have one letter at the end of each branch. So like there's B, maybe this is E, animal E, whatever. But keep splitting it up as you go along. Maybe I divide my creatures with 6 legs to wings and no wings. This is going to take you some time. This is not a simple thing. Then what I'd like you to do is on another piece of paper, or on the back side of the piece of paper that you've been doing this, actually I'd like you to do this in your notebook. But I want you to start a new chart. And this time I want you to do it in the verbal format, the written out way. And again, if you don't know where to start, do 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and so on. Maybe up to like 5 or 6. To get started, you'll probably need more numbers than that, but that'll get you a good start. Then what I'd like you to do is actually go in and fill it in. You can use the same questions. You can use the same questions that you did above. You don't have to reinvent everything. So if you did 6 legs and not 6 legs, and that probably isn't the best way to start, but just throwing it out there as an example, then use that same question down here when you go to do it over here. Like for example, on this one, the questions are the same for both formats. Here we have the verbal dichotomous key, and we've got organism is living and organism is not living. And then on this page over here, on the graphic style, again, living and not living. So you can use the same questions, microscopic and macroscopic. And then over here, we've got microscopic and macroscopic. It's down here at 4. Okay, so you can use the same questions, so it's the same information just presented 2 different ways. This is something that you're going to have to do at the end of the year. Not just answer questions about it, but be able to actually create these. Okay, when you're done making them, I want you to show them to whoever is with you and have them take a look at it. So I want you to make sure that you're having the adult, probably Mr. Abate, but if it's not, just for whatever reason, whoever's with you, I want you to show it to that person. And I'm going to leave instructions for the adult in the room to make sure they know that you'll be expected to do that. So try to make it both ways. This is going to take you some time to do it both the graphic way and to do it the verbal way. Doing both is going to take you a while, maybe about 20 minutes, half hour, something like that. So it's going to take you a little while, but do a good job, take your time. If you need more than one day, we could probably work that out. But I want you to do a good job with it. This is what you're going to have to do at the end of the year. And lastly, these creatures, these bags of plastic creatures, are from Mrs. Molinaro. She spent a lot of time organizing these, and over the past few years, they'd become kind of a mess, and she spent a lot of time organizing them. And I want you to do a good job about putting these things away. Make sure that there's no duplicates. Make sure you're not trading them. Make sure that you put them away nicely, and make sure you treat them nicely too. Don't rip the legs off or the wings off, things like that. Try to be easy on them. They've been around a long time, and we want to keep using them for a while to come. But try to keep the bags organized. If you don't, she's going to get angry. Those of you that had her last year, I think can imagine what that's like. So, just keep that in mind. If these aren't put away very nicely, she's going to be mad, probably at me, but probably at you too. And, it's never pretty when she's angry. So try to do a good job putting these things away. Better than usual, because again, they're not mine and I'm borrowing them from her. Alright, enough said about that. So that's what I'd like you to work on with dichotomous keys. Okay, good luck.